Good afternoon. My name is Gopi Kalayal, and I'm delighted to welcome to the Google campus for the fourth time Radhanath Swami, the author of the international bestseller, The Journey Home, and now the New York Times bestseller, The Journey Within. I had my first opportunity to learn about Radhanath Swami, of all the things, in a video about Burning Man. He does get around to the most interesting of places. But during the Burning Man interview, in response to a question, he said, everybody's looking for happiness, and in search of the happiness, we change our externalities, whereas to find true happiness, we need to shift our consciousness. And the way Radhanath Swami reached this very important insight was through his own personal journey, where when he was 19 years old, he left Chicago, and in search of what is the source of true happiness, he hitchhiked his way across Europe, Central Asia, all the way to India, and arrived there on the borders with no money, and they would not let him in, and he persuaded them to allow him to come in, and he said he would do something for humanity at large, and particularly for the people of India. But during the course of the journey, what he realized that the cause for most problems in life was human frailties that happen irrespective of who you are and what your background is. And he's committed himself to really studying human consciousness, relationship between people, and how that can be a source of happiness if you approach it the right way. And in exploring all of these issues, with very little resources as a monk, he has no bank account, no money, but he's managed to persuade a large group of people to work alongside him and create several humanitarian projects around the world, including a midday meal program that feeds 1.2 million children every school day in India, eco-village outside Mumbai, a hospital that provides free or low-cost holistic care, and a number of other projects like that around the world, demonstrating to us that more than resources, it is like an inner commitment that comes from somewhere deep within, as the path of yoga would dictate, that can really allow us to manifest our fullest potential. And here to discuss more about this topic and to explore this with us, his own journey, as well as what it means in our lives, please help me welcome to the stage at Google for the fourth time, Mr. Radhanath Swami.
Om Jnantimidandasya Jnananjanachalakaya Chakshurun Militam Jena Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namine. Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Sunyavadi Paschyatyate Shatarine. Vanchakalpatarubhyascha kripasindubhya evacha patithanam bhavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasati Gaur Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. I'm very grateful to be with all of you today. Thank you, Gopi, for opening the doors to this world-renowned, most influential institution of Google, for me to share some thoughts with you. And my sincere gratitude to each and every one of you who has come today. I was asked to speak on the subject of the currency of relationships. Generally, we think of currency as a medium for exchange, as a means of expressing what has value. And so often in the world today, we underestimate the currency of relationships because we become distracted from what we really want to achieve in our life. Emerson wrote that the reason why this world is in so much chaos and conflict, with so much dissatisfaction, is because people are disconnected from their own selves. What is happiness? What are we really looking for? The tendency, not only today, but always through our human history, is that we become so distracted toward things that are relatively superficial, and we lose our scope of what's really important in life. There's an analogy I learned in South India. There's a bird called a crane. White feathers, long beak, stands on one leg in a stream of water, looking down for food. And so many little fish are passing. Dozens and dozens of little fish, hundreds of little fish, thousands of little fish. The crane observes, lets them pass. When a big fish comes, he eats it and feasts. Now, I don't eat fish, but the analogy is appropriate. He's keeping his attention focused on what is actually significant and lets all the little things go. Unless we are focused on the higher principles, the more valuable things that are really in our lives, then we're easily distracted by every single little fish, and we never find the big one. It's so easy to see a little pebble as a mountain, unless we're focused on a real mountain. Because anandamayo bhyashat, everyone is seeking pleasure, everyone is seeking meaning. Unless we're focused on deep issues, then we will be obsessed with little things. And this is especially true with relationships. I often cite an example of my own mother and father. When I was about 8 years old, my mother told me as I was sitting on her bed that everyone loves your father and everyone loves me, but we do not love each other. We have decided we're going to separate. Now, as a little child, I couldn't even fathom that idea. My parents don't love each other and they're separating. I was so disoriented, so broken-hearted by hearing that I couldn't say a word. I just sat and cried. My mother was shocked to see my reaction. She didn't know what to say. And I got up and I ran out the door, down the hall, down the stairs, through the living room, out the door, and ran for blocks and blocks. And hid in some bushes. This was almost 60 years ago. I waited a few hours, and then I saw my father's car coming down the road, and I knew he was coming home, and I knew my mother was going to tell him what happened and my reaction. So after he went in the door, I secretly snuck in the back door. And when he went into his bedroom to meet my mother, and they closed the door, I secretly put my ear to the door, because I wanted to hear what they were going to discuss. My mother told my father what she said and what happened. There was complete silence. And then I heard them both say, for the sake of our children, we are going to make this work. It wasn't easy for them. They struggled. But they had a higher principle than their own disagreements. They had a big fish to focus on. And over the years, it was hard work for them, I know. But I saw perhaps the most united, loving relationship between two people that I had seen. They earned it by focusing on the higher principle. They let all the little things pass. And my own guru, Srila Prabhupada, I remember he was giving a talk at a marriage. And he gave an analogy about Mahatma Gandhi. He said, he's quoting from Mahatma Gandhi's autobiography, I believe. One time Gandhi and his wife had a serious argument. And Gandhi got angry and said, "Get out from here." So his wife left. And she sat out on the street in front of the house for some hours. And then Gandhi came out and he saw his wife still there. He says, "What are you still doing here?" And she said, "I have nowhere to go." And he said, "All right, let's just forget it." And she said, "Yes, let's just forget it." And Srila Prabhupada explained, when we have disagreements, if we have a higher purpose that we're recognizing of why we're together, then we can easily, or maybe not easily, but we understand the necessity of forgetting all these little things. Somehow or other adjusting. I left college after one semester, so I don't know too much about technology or medicine. But as far as I know, when you're developing electronics, there's conductors and superconductors and semiconductors, so that the current can flow in an effective way to fulfill the purpose of that device, without overheating, without conflict between the different components. That type of circuitry is required in our relationships with each other. Ultimately, things can give some pleasure, some fulfillment to the body and to the senses and to the mind, but not to the heart. Essentially, people are looking for love. Only love can give fulfillment to the heart. And that flow of love, like the heart itself, pumps blood and receives blood. But if there's plaque in the arteries, then the flow both within and out of the heart is blocked. The plaque of selfish desires, of false ego or arrogance. When it blocks our ability to love and experience love. And the principle of yoga, the principle of spirituality, the true quality of humanity is when we learn how to love and how to be loved. I was seeing Gopi's book about the internet and the internet. And it's a brilliant conception, and Gopi is a person who has realization and experience seeing the world. How the things, whether it's technology, strength, intelligence, it can develop into a great benefit or a great danger, depending on us. A knife is neither good or bad. It's determined by who has that knife. A thief will use the knife to kill someone, to take what they have. And a doctor will use the same knife to save a person's life. Our bodies, our wealth, our science, our technology, our currency of economics, everything is potentially either destructive or constructive for the well-being of ourselves and others, or for the opposite, according to what's within our own hearts. The ecology today, there's so much pollution. Why? Because people's hearts are polluted. You cannot really sustainably clean up the ecology of the world until we learn to clean the ecology of the human heart. Greed, insatiable selfishness, arrogance. As long as that's there, the pollution within will manifest as the pollution in our relationships and in the environment around us. The concept of yoga or spirituality is cleansing the ecology of the heart. Learning to help one another to focus and unite on the really higher, meaningful principles. Srila Prabhupada, my teacher, gave an example. If you throw a stone in the middle of a pond, the circles that come out will all be harmonious with each other. But if you throw different stones in different parts of the same pond, all the different circles will collide because they have a different center point. Yes, there are different religions in this world, and there are different races and different nationalities and different people with different occupational tendencies and different roles in society. But what do we all have in common? What is this higher principle? who are we? It's very difficult to see the unity among us unless we really have something to unify. In the Bible it is said, "What profiteth a person who gains the whole world but loses their eternal soul?" It also says that the first commandment is to love God with all your heart, mind, and soul, and the natural byproduct of that is you will love your neighbor as yourself. And you'll recognize everyone, of all races, of all religions, of all species, is our neighbor. In the Bhagavad Gita, there is the same principle stated. Vidyavanaya sampane brahmani gabhyastini suni chaiva swapake cha pandita samadarshana. That true knowledge is when we see with equal vision the higher principle of what our relationship is with others. When we understand who we are, am I this body or am I in this body? Am I this mind or am I witnessing life through this mind? These are serious questions that are rarely pondered in today's world. The beginning of true spiritual knowledge in all various traditions is to understand, who am I? And what is my relationship with others? The Bhagavad Gita tells Najayate Mriyate Va Kadachit, that we are the Atma, the living force that is seeing through the eyes and tasting through the tongue and hearing through the ears. The nature of that spirit is it is beyond birth and beyond death. It is a part of God. And every living being is of the same source. When we actually connect to the truth of who we are, we can understand our relationship with all others. The nature of life itself, the nature of the soul, is to love and to experience the infinite love of the Supreme, to be an instrument of that love. When that is the principle, that is our focus, then we can remain united with respect under all of the various stormy conditions of this world. This building is very beautiful, but it's only here because there's a foundation. Without that foundation, however architecturally pleasing a structure may be, when the storm comes, it will collapse. What is the foundation of our own state of being? What is the foundational principle of our occupation, our family relationships, in our interactions with the environment and the world? When we have a strong inner foundation, when we find that peace, that inner fulfillment, that inner love that is within us, that is our nature, then whatever temptations or fears may come in life, whatever storms may appear, we remain strong, we remain stable, we remain focused on what is really important. There are limitless reasons to fight, to disagree, to hate. But there's one really special, important reason to respect, to love, and to live with integrity. Because that is truth. That is what is pleasing to God, however we may know. And that is the only way we can find meaning and fulfillment in our lives. What is within us is expressed. And I'll end with one little story that I love to tell. Years ago, I was sitting on the bank of the river Ganges. It was a summer day. And because it was a summer day, this is in India, it was probably 110 degrees Fahrenheit. There was no one around. It was just me. There wasn't a cloud in the sky. It was burning hot. And I was eager to go in the river. But first I wanted to sit and meditate for a few minutes. And I saw over my head there was a huge hawk. His brown feathers were shining in the sun. He had yellow eyes that were glistening, very sharp claws and beak. And he was looking down. And he was right over my head, maybe about 20 feet. And he was circling lower and lower and lower. And I kept looking up. It looked like he was looking at me, because there was no one else around. I said a little prayer. Suddenly, he dove right into the river. Just a few feet in front of me. It was underwater. There was a skirmish. And then he came out from the river, and in his claws was a fish, about a foot long. And because it was so close to me, I could see the eyes of that little fish. He looked so bewildered. He looked so disoriented. And I was thinking that this little fish was probably going about his day like every other day. Swimming upstream, swimming downstream, swimming across stream. Maybe with his family of fish, looking for food, playing. Suddenly, at the least expected moment, the hawk of fate ripped him right out of his ordinary life. And he was flapping desperately as the hawk carried him further and further and further into the forest. And I was thinking, what am I supposed to learn from this? Like that little fish, we go about our life. But at any moment, we could be ripped out of our complacency. We read about it. We hear about it. It's happened to us. But if that fish was swimming deeper, the hawk could not reach it. And similarly, when we find our meaning, our purpose, and our fulfillment within ourselves in a deeper way, and when our relationships are focused in a deeper way for a higher purpose, then the inevitable changes of this world, the sunny days and the stormy days, cannot disturb us. humanity is based on the principle of brotherhood and sisterhood. But on the physical level, it's very superficial. It is in the brotherhood and sisterhood of life, on the basis of the depth of our own souls, beyond sectarian concepts, that we can understand our unity and the necessity of that unity. When we keep focused on higher principles, we can easily adjust and effectively deal with the circumstances around us. If we're depending on our unity and depending on our inner fulfillment on those circumstances, then so much is beyond our control. It is simply unsustainable. Great leaders help people to unite on these higher principles. Parents, political leaders, spiritual leaders, leaders within various types of companies. And the highest, deepest connection comes from learning how to love. Love is an expression of the heart. Love is when we value unselfish service for the well-being of others. Compassion is the natural expression of a loving heart. It's the greatest need in the world today. In all of our companies and all of our relationships, to learn the value of compassion. Thank you very much. The question is, does the world create consciousness, or does consciousness create the world? In the Vedic literatures, there is a particular book that is called the Brahma Sutra. It is the summary of the essence of a huge body of literatures dealing with so many various subject matters. And the first verse is Janmadhyasya Yataha, that everything is coming from one source. That source has many names: Bhagavan, Parabrahman, God, Krishna. We understand that ultimately everything is coming from the ultimate state of consciousness, the cause of all causes. And everything is within material nature is orchestrated by that supreme consciousness. In our own little bodies, we grow because there's consciousness. At the beginning, the father and the mother come together and there's a little tiny seed, and it begins to grow because there's consciousness there. And it grows into a little embryo, and then it's born as a little infant. Then it becomes a baby, and then it grows through childhood, through adolescence, through middle age, old age. When that conscious force leaves the body, there's no more growth. There's only dwindling. Yes? Similarly, today I was taking a walk and I saw this enormous redwood tree. It's, I don't know how many centuries old it is, but it's still growing and growing and growing because there's conscious life within that tree. But when the conscious life is no longer there, it cannot grow. The little flower, there's consciousness within that little flower that makes it bloom and gives it its fragrance. So we see in our own practical experience how wherever there's consciousness, there's growth, there's development. So from a spiritual perspective, it is consciousness that is the source of everything that exists. And there's an ultimate supreme consciousness that's the source of everything. Is there a recipe to keeping focused on these higher principles in our lives? In our tradition, there's three very important principles that help us remain focused. One is Satsang. Satsang means to be with enlightened people and to be with people who are striving for enlightenment, to help us remain focused, to help inspire us. It's very important. Who we associate, what we associate with, very much influences the values we have in our life. If you put an iron rod in fire, after time it becomes red and hot like fire. If you put that same iron rod in ice, after some time it becomes as cold as ice. I know many people who are helplessly drug addicts and alcoholics. And in Alcoholics Anonymous or Narcotics Anonymous, because they had an assembly of people with the common interests of becoming sober and remaining sober, they were able to overcome those distractions. In this world, people are so much addicted to greed and envy and selfishness and arrogance. We need each other to help, to actually give the strength, the clarity of vision, so that we don't fall into these trappings. In a redwood forest, the roots underground are interconnected and give support. Every tree in the redwood forest is directly or indirectly giving support to each other. And even in the face of earthquakes and massive storms, they keep growing together because they support each other. Satsang is very important, where we come together to help each other focus on that big fish, on the higher principles that are really of value in life, and help each other to overcome and resist falling into temptations and fears that distract us from our real purpose. And putting some time a day for a spiritual practice to make that inner connection is very important. The other day I was speaking at the Apple Corporation, and I was remembering how in their computers they have batteries, and how long the battery lasts is very important. you have to keep recharging that battery. So similarly, our own spiritual batteries, our own integrity and focus, to recharge it through proper company, through our prayers, through our meditation. In our tradition, we chant God's names. It keeps us charged with spiritual strength and with a clear vision of what really is important in our lives and what we really want to achieve. And then sadachar. Sadachar is integrating the blessings we receive through the company we keep and through our spiritual practices in our life. To live with character, to live with integrity. This human body, there are various limbs and organs, and each one has its own unique function. The heart is pumping blood, the brain has a function, the lungs, the pancreas, the kidneys. One cannot do what the other does. They have different shapes, different colors, and very different functions. What is a healthy body? If the stomach is thinking, I'm the one supplying food to every part of the body, I don't like you, kidneys, I'm not going to give you anything. If the stomach thinks like that, the whole body becomes sick, including the stomach. Every part of the body recognizes, appreciates, and respects every other part of the body. So within the social body, we have engineers, farmers, scientists, we have bankers, we have people in politics. There are so many various professions. We also have swamis and priests. They are all serving a particular function, but with appreciation and respect for the contribution of each other. We need farmers. We need bankers. Technology is absolutely wonderful if it's utilized for wonderful purposes. Philosophy is wonderful if it's used for wonderful purposes. So the principle of Dharma, or spirituality, is to understand the difference between material and spiritual. Everything is potentially spiritual if we understand its relationship with the Supreme. If we understand the relationship we all have with each other on that basis. And just like that knife analogy I was giving, if we recognize that, then we can express the highest Dharma in whatever occupation we may be in. Sitting here today is one of my dearest friends and brothers, Guru Das. And years ago, he was living in John Lennon's estate, just outside of London. This is in the 1960s. John Lennon is from the Beatles. And George Harrison became very serious about this bhakti yoga, or Krishna consciousness. And he came to our Guru, Srila Prabhupada, and he asked permission to shave his head and become a resident of the ashram. And Srila Prabhupada, our Guru, told him, you're a musician, you have fame, you have wealth, you're a Beatle. you can serve better by just doing it with a spiritual purpose. And he did. And he affected more people with spiritual values than most any monk ever did. So, spiritual life is not about changing our occupation. It's about changing our consciousness, changing our values. I know CEOs of corporations, international corporations with families, who are really saints because they're not trying to exploit people. They have inner integrity. They've developed and excavated that inner love, and they express it through their work. And it's beautiful.
And with that, on behalf of everyone here in Google, I'd like to thank Radhanath Swami for spending time with us, sharing his incredible wisdom. Thank you.